Welcome everybody to the Monday Night Tours. We are your guides on this magical journey that is the tour through the Monday Night Wars. I am Josh Kaiser, and I am joined today by Kyle Hoagland. How are you doing today, sir?
Not doing too bad. Looking forward to this one. Looking forward to all of them. I feel like I say that same thing every week.
Pretty much. It's like when Tony Schiavone used to say that this is going to be the greatest day in the history of our sport. It became a cliche, and why not be a cliche with them, right?
I feel like I shouldn't be lazy and not call everything fantastic maneuvers and come up with something better to talk about every time we start an episode. But regardless, I am honestly looking forward to talking about this one because I felt like the quality was better. Let's say the quality was better than last week. Then again, that's not saying much.
Yeah, well, of course, we are discussing the week of the November 6th, 1995 editions of Monday Nitro and Raw, and we've kind of been on a streak here of some bad episodes. I think you'd agree with me that the last 2 weeks for both shows have been lackluster, and we're hoping to kind of get a bounce back this week. And we're going to start things off here in Nitro, where we're live from Jacksonville, Florida. So it's been kind of a reoccurring theme now that they're announcing the cities. So I don't know if it's just become they're just in bigger named cities at this point, or if that's going to be the norm going forward. We're not going to have to guess. Hopefully, that's the case.
I think they're going to announce Jacksonville, Florida. I think earns it.
I agree, but I'm just saying, like we had the same thing with Dayton last week, and I'm drawing a blank what the city was before that, but we had them.
Dude,
as
Huntsville,
well.
Alabama.
Alabama. Yeah, there you go. So they've been naming them. We'll see if that's a trend that sticks. And the show opens up. We're going right to the commentary booth, as you know, is usually the case. And Pepe is rocking a red and white polka dot hat, like kind of a dunce cap hat, and like a little bit of like a frilly, scarfy skirt sort of thing over around its neck. And Mongo basically says that it's dressed like a clown because Jimmy Hart is a clown. So Mongo,
nothing else really to it. That's all it was. Also, did you notice he looked like he was wearing blue long johns? I felt like that was a nice little, like, I don't know, compliment to the. I was kind of hoping I would have actually had more respect for Mongo if we always make a joke that whatever Pepe wears that Mongo compliments. This time he did not do that. Although I would have loved it if he wore some sort of clown outfit.
Well, Kyle, if you would have had your way of calling the shots, you would have been able to put Mongo in that clown outfit. And that said, the fans were able to call the shots for today's. See what I did there? I set it up. Of course, Nitro, it's the You Called the Shots main event, Kyle. So this is pretty exciting. This is back in the day before the internet was really much of a thing. So you get to call, pay 90 cents a minute. Back when you could
vote for free how you wanted a match. Here, you had to pay 99 cents per minute for each additional minute. Or $1.99 for the first minute, 99 cents for each additional minute.
So it's pretty exciting. The fans get to vote in, Kyle. We get to play Booker this week. Not Booker T, but we get to play the Booker of the matches. So pretty exciting that they're going to let the main event be put into the hands of the fans, Kyle. That's a pretty big responsibility.
And obviously they're gonna make sure that they're gonna give us a list of wrestlers that can just be simply mix and match to create your dream kind of match.
Dream matches, right?
They're definitely not. They're not gonna like pick like one guy on each side and really weigh it really hard to be like, dude, makes no sense picking anything else. Clearly, WCW would never do that.
Not at all. And of course, we're gonna find out. We got the red locker room, and the idea is you're gonna be able to vote from one from each colored locker room. So of course, in the red locker room, you have Ric Flair, the Nature Boy Ric Flair. You also have Ming, DDP, the Blue Bloods are somewhere in the back, Big Bubba Shark, and Scott Norton. So a list of great heels, but of course don't forget Ric Flair's there. And then in the blue locker room, you have Sting. Remember the guy that Ric Flair attacked, turned his back on at Halloween Havoc? Of course, Sting wants Flair left for dead. That guy, Sting, the one who wants to attack Flair and get his revenge. He's there.
The same guy who is a huge money draw, one of the biggest stars in the company, and obviously, he wants to fight Ric Flair, who is it's fucking Ric Flair. He's a main eventer. He's a blue chipper. He's a guy that everybody also wants to see. You've got Hulk Hogan, you got Sting, you got Ric Flair. Those are like 1, 2, 3. You got
two of those three right there in each locker room. Also, Johnny B. Bad, Hexall Jim Duggan, Dave Sullivan, who makes his debut on Nitro with his rabbit, Alex Wright, the Nasty Boys, because why not? And, of course, JL. So, Kyle, obviously, we're being... The sarcasm is heavily laid here, but the
I think facetious is the word we're coming up with there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was obvious right from the get-go, Sting vs. Flair is the main event that they've already booked and written storylines for, and they're just going to make some extra money with the stupid-ass fans that are going to call in and vote, right?
I feel, well, the problem was, I feel like, at least be subtle about it. Like, my God. I mean, we'll talk about throughout the whole show. It's going to be a running gag about how clearly they want you to vote for Sting and Flair. But, I mean, they were the first choices on each team. Even if someone just called in and didn't even have the patience on the phone. Because remember, you're being charged $1.99 for that first minute. You don't want to get on that second minute and pay another 99 cents. So you're like, all right, your first choice could be Ric Flair. Or just Ric Flair. Right. Just pick Ric Flair. Because I'm not putting my credit card on this. So Sting and Flair it was definitely weighted. This was definitely Russia was definitely in on the collusion of this vote.
Oh, there you have it. Mongo with the political comments here. Thanks.
Sorry.
They do cut back to the commentary after announcing both locker rooms and remind you again that Ric Flair turned his back on Sting. So the seeds of this match are already being planted early into the minds of the viewers. And as they talk about this, they cut to a scene from Halloween Havoc. Of course, it's going to be the scene that they're discussing, right, where Flair turns on Sting. No, it's Luger putting Hogan in the torture rack as they mention that Macho Man is too beat up to wrestle tonight. I have no idea.
This time, at least they had the tape this time. Last week, they didn't have the tape for anything. Now they at least were able to give us some highlights this week.
Right. But I will say, Kyle, I think you and I had the same idea. Bobby Heenan suggests that he wants to see Tony Schiavone versus Gene Okerlund, and that would be his vote. I got to be honest, I would love to see that. So
I would love to see that. And later on in the show, Okerlund screws up on Schiavone's name, and I'm like, oh, that's also just sowing the seeds of disdain between the two.
There you have it. But, of course, we're going to open tonight's show up with a world title match. The Giant, of course, the champion of the world, defending his title against anybody, if you recall what he said last week. And he's going to be wrestling Cobra. So Cobra answers the call and comes out to Morse code blaring. This was really irritating to me. I
had to replay it and turn off my headset. I thought it was me doing that. I thought there was did I have like some other browser up where my headset screwing up? I didn't get it.
The audio was weird. It was beeping, and you pointed something out I didn't even think about, and I don't know if you researched this or it just made sense to you, and I'm sure that's the case. Metallica was the theme song for Cobra, and of course WWE Network having all kinds of issues with rights and stuff, not paying for a lot of that theme songs and such, decided that Morse code would be the best way to cover that up. Bad call, WWE.
Horrible call. Like I think they can. I mean, clearly there's royalty-free music out there. I mean, we use it right now for the beginning of our podcast. Right. You don't think they couldn't just find something?
I mean, at that point, just mute the fucking thing. You know, Morse code was irritating as can be. Anyways, so Giant lifts Dave Penzer, the ring announcer, up in the air, who announces that, of course, Giant will be defending his title, which Eric Bischoff clearly states over and over, Giant is not the champion. He is not defending the title here. And Jimmy Hart is actually given the title, Kyle, which you point out is typically not what happens when a title is on the line. It's usually handed to the ref, then from the ref to the timekeeper. And so we're not sure if the title's on the line or not. But the match begins. Giant choke slams Cobra, 1, 2, 3. This is the squashiest of squash matches, and it's over before it's done. Kyle, there's not much to say about this. It was literally a choke slam. I've already spoken more than the match was worth. Do you like the quick squash match for the Giant here?
I think so, because we knew going in. I don't think Cobra was going to do anything. I think this was supposed to assert that the Giant is clearly that dominant, and it also shows that he's not there to toy around with people in the ring. He just goes in and he does the one move he knows how to do, which is at this point the choke slam.
Right.
So I'm okay with this squash. I didn't give it a rating, and I don't think you did.
No,
either.
I didn't. I mean, it was
literally a choke slam.
Yeah, it was literally a choke slam. It keeps Giant protected because he's still green, gives him more time to develop on house shows and things like that. So I'm fine with it. Let him be the monster that he is. And you got the quote of the year from Mongo after the match was over. He says to Bobby Heenan, "You haven't seen anything that quick since your honeymoon." And them are fighting words. I don't want to see Gene and Schiavone anymore. I want to see Heenan and Mongo.
And Heenan has already hinted that he wants him back. He wants him on the outside, to get some things figured out between the two. So definitely some disdain. And you think that maybe Mongo's, if it was up to Heenan, I'm sure Heenan would love to have Mongo's wrestling career start much earlier than it does.
Right. Speaking of Mean Gene, we're going to cut to him, who's in the red locker room. Of course, if you remember, there's a bunch of heels there, and Ric Flair. But it starts out Scott Norton, Kyle, and the Shark, who, of course, are both part of the heels in the red locker room. They're pushing each other around. So,
well, they're also feuding, which I kind of appreciate.
Well, that's what I mean. They're both in a feud, and they're pushing each other around. So they haven't given up on that feud. I know we talked about it a little bit last week that could have been it. It's not. It looks like they're still keeping that story strong. And now, Kyle, sadly, it's becoming one of the most intense feuds that there are going on right now. So.
Or feuds, period.
Right, you've got Hogan Giant, you've got Sting Flair, Shark Norton. So it's right there. Of course, Flair gets on the mic and this group of heels cuts a promo on Sting, furthering this whole story. In the background, the Blue Bloods are drinking tea and reading books. Of course, they know that they're not in a match tonight, so they don't have to worry about it. And I just got to say, Kyle, I'm really sad it wasn't voted on the internet because you get some ridiculous match if it was where like Dave Sullivan would be wrestling Sting or wrestling Flair or it'd be like Dave Sullivan versus the Blue Bloods or something to that effect. Like there would have been a much better outcome if the fans really got a real say in today's society. I
would like to think that even if there was a vote and it wasn't Sting versus Flair, it still would have been Sting versus Flair.
yeah, probably. Knowing WCW.
I'm pretty sure WCW would have just taken the money.
Right. Then we cut over to Tony Schiavone, who's in the blue locker room. Hacksaw Jim Duggan
It's Tony Schiavone.
Yeah.
According to Gene.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan needs to calm down. The dude was yelling. He was like cursing, and he was throwing his like 2x4 across this camera, running across, and then throwing it back the other way. He just kept cutting across in front of Sting, who, of course, was cutting a promo on Ric Flair.
I loved it.
Further that. And the Nasty Boys, of course, mentioned that they want the Blue Bloods, just in case there's a little hint that you might get a tag team main event. You're not going to, but whatever. After this, Kyle, we get our World War III promo. It's 3 rings, 3 giants, 1 giant in each ring. You and I both recall that Giant, of course, is going to be one of the big men. Yeti's going to be another one. And I can't remember who the third giant is yet either. And I didn't want to look it up. I just want to be surprised. So we'll wait and see there.
I think I'd still be surprised if the Yeti was one, too. I didn't think the Yeti showed up in anything else other than Halloween Havoc.
No, he does show up 1 or 2 more times, and I think it was World War III.
Okay, all right. And if it is Shark, that's a complete downgrade to the third giant.
Well, is it, though, when the Yeti's in there?
Well, I think the whole plan was supposed to be Giant, the original Yeti, which was at the time El Gigante,
right?
Which didn't end up being Reese, and then I think the third was supposed to be Reese. So I think that was like the original plan was they were supposed to get El Gigante as the original Yeti, and then they were going to bill Reese later on as the third giant,
right?
But I don't think that's how it happens. Then again, I don't know. I could be surprised.
Time will tell, but that was a quick World War III promo. Then we got Macho Man and Hulk Hogan hanging out in Venice Beach. They're both rocking black and white here, Kyle, so it's kind of funny seeing them in what you'll sort of get used to seeing them here shortly when the NWO is formed. But in the meantime, Hogan's basically trying to get Macho Man to come to the dark side with him. And it's a really fucking weird promo because Hogan is kind of talking to Macho Man about joining the dark side. And meanwhile, some cracked out Lou Albano looking motherfucker is sitting on there rambling and just talking over the entire promo. It's incredibly distracting. Meanwhile, there's some hippie sort of dirtbag hobo looking guy playing a guitar.
He looked like Jimi Hendrix wearing a Sultan turban.
It was
or some sort.
It was the most bizarre, weird promo that I think WCW has produced yet, and I don't know what I was supposed to make out of that entire thing, other than
Goldust would have given this a thumbs up.
Nice. But that was that, and then of course we cut back to some real action, and we got Taskmaster, who is joined by Jimmy Hart, versus the Renegade. Of course, the Renegade is the Warrior ripoff that the WCW tried using. And Kyle, there's not much to say about this match. The Renegade comes sprinting down, a la Ultimate Warrior, does some terrible looking clotheslines to the Taskmaster.
Why do I feel like that was? I feel like that was Sullivan's fault, though. I don't know. I feel like taking a clothesline is like wrestling 101. You would think that Sullivan would take the bump for him, but it looked like he just didn't.
And yeah, that nobody wants to take a bump from the Renegade. Renegade does close him over the top rope. No disqualification is called there, as you pointed out in your notes. We might have seen the end of the over-the-top disqualification, because now they're not even talking about it and giving some bogus reason why it wasn't a DQ. So maybe it's over. We'll wait and see, but no announcement has ever been made about that. They do mention that Sonny Ono, of course, being this Japanese businessman, he's bringing in his Japanese contingent, and you're expecting to see a lot of them on WCW Pro. So for those of you lucky enough to watch WCW Pro, you're going to watch the Japanese contingent there. After that, the two, Taskmaster and Renegade, are battling on the outside, and Jimmy Hart is just berating the Renegade with his megaphone here. Of course, he represented him for a period of time, and basically tells him what a piece of shit Renegade is. And Kyle, you made a note here, Nick Patrick is being an awful referee when it comes to the battling on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's no like count out. He's not counting. He just comes out to the ring. Or he leaves the ring, which the ref is never supposed to do. And I'm sorry. I think there's more examples of shitty reffing, but I mean, Nick Patrick is just every week there's something that I've got to judge him for.
Yeah, Nick Bockwinkel really needs to get his act together with his refereeing crew here. So they eventually do get back in the ring. Renegade does that cartwheel elbow into the corner. And then he goes to kind of like splash him or something in the other corner. He misses and gets caught into a tree of woe. Sullivan quickly puts him out of his misery with the worst looking coup de grace off the second rope that I think I've ever seen. This is a 1-star match. I think it was supposed to be some sort of Sullivan squash match, but it really wasn't all that good. Anything you want to add to that in your rating, Kyle?
This was a 1-star match if it wasn't for the sake that I think I actually gave Jimmy Hart the fact that this was – I'm sorry, it was I gave it 1.5 stars, though I actually could have been a 1 3/4 because of Jimmy Hart, because it was personal, because the Renegade was actually Jimmy Hart's Jimmy Hart was the Renegade's manager as well when the Renegade was like one part of the Hulkamaniacs when they first, first bringing him in as being this ripoff.
Yeah.
So I was more invested in the match because of it, because it was just Jimmy Hart berating him, something like, you could have been the next Hulk Hogan. You could have been the next Hulk Hogan. And then he does like the unthinkable in wrestling, which is splashing water on his face, rubbing the paint off of his face, and just being like, you're just plain old Rick now. You're just old Rick. Like, he basically he killed the character of Renegade on live television.
He really did kill it. And I afterwards, I had to look on Wikipedia. We will see the Renegade again, but it's going to be a little while from now. But it is noted that he basically killed the character right then and there. But let's be honest, the Renegade was dead in the water from the beginning.
But at least there was something. There was something that I was able to be like, damn, dude. Like there was like that was some real. I understand that it's all just an act, but it kind of pulled at your personal strings. Like, wow, like that was a little bit, devious. So I did give it a little extra just from the storytelling perspective.
Sure, I'll give you that. Then they cut back after the match to Mean Gene, who's back in the Red Locker Room. He refers to Bobby Heenan's negotiations with Sonny Ono to that of Art Modell moving the Browns. So yet again, Kyle, us Clevelanders cannot escape this. First we had the Indians and the Braves. Now we have the Browns moving. 95 was not kind to Cleveland fans. But back to this, Shark and Scott Norton are still going after it. So this this feud is really heating up. If one of them was in the blue locker room, I have no doubt in my mind Scott Norton and the Shark would have won this.
That's why they did that. It's kind of like gerrymandering. They put all the characters on one side, so you couldn't vote for either or. So
that's right. Then the lights kind of go off while Flair's cutting a promo on Sting, and then they come back on in the middle of it. Flair kind of handles it well. I got to be honest, Kyle. I think somebody just accidentally shut the lights off. It did not feel like it was supposed to happen that way at all.
Yeah, this looked like a Gene Okerlund fuck it moment on from WWF all over again. Flair handled it like the champ he is.
He sure did. After that, we get a WCW Saturday Night promo. Arn Anderson is going to be watching the arm breaker known as Kurosawa. Disco Inferno is going to be debuting a music video, which you should probably go on YouTube and Google that. I have not done it yet, but I intend to because I really want to see what the hell this music video is all about. And then they mentioned Jim Duggan is going to Ireland. I have no idea what's happening on WCW Saturday Night, but now I kind of wish that I.
If for real he does go to Ireland, like who the hell's idea was that to expense Jim Duggan to go to Ireland?
Dude, just want to say, could you imagine what that is? It's him going, oh, with his tongue out, like carrying the American flag into like pubs and just waving it around and sticking his tongue out.
I feel like they barely would have paid for the fact that well, first of all, I don't even know if Hogan and Macho Man were actually in Venice Beach. They could have made that shit up. But I know that they were in Jacksonville. Venice Beach is not crazy far away. They probably could have gotten away with it. But, I mean, I'm sure that was expense to an extent. But I don't think Jim Duggan is getting the red carpet treatment of, like, trips to Ireland.
Hey, you never know. You have to turn into Saturday Night to find out what happened there. After this, though, Kyle, back by popular demand, as Eric Bischoff says, we got Chris Benoit versus Eddie Guerrero again. And as a fan of both of them, I know that you probably enjoyed this match.
Well, as a first of a disclaimer, I like to say I'm not a fan of double murder and suicide. So let's move on now with the actual. I don't want you throwing me in a pit here.
Fair enough.
Oh, see, you love Chris Benoit, right, Kyle? All right. So, anyways, I do enjoy list them as wrestlers. So the match starts off with like Eddie and Benoit. They go fast, and Benoit actually, I thought that they would start the match kind of trading blows or going kind of fast, kind of like a Malenko thing where they kind of counter everything. I was actually very surprised that Benoit really got on the early offense with a snap suplex and a belly-to-back suplex. So Benoit's starting off, fast and aggressive. Bischoff then teases the cruiserweight division, but also saying that the reason why he's saying that is because he thinks that the two people in the ring would be prime candidates to be in this. We don't know yet whether it's it's a tournament or what the case may be with this, but we're honestly on the outside looking in. I think I speak for both of us. I think we're looking forward to when the cruiserweight division starts because I think that was one of the biggest attractions between the two shows.
That I think
different, gave people something different to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So then. I love that Benoit gave him some sort of kind of a weird looking spine buster and then puts him in the walls of Jericho. And I thought that was awesome. I'm like, wow, he's putting him in someone else's finishing move that before that move really existed, according to the mainstream fans. I just thought that was then he just releases it. But I was like, oh, that would have been cool if he just got him to submit. Then we go to Sonny Ono, who's also at ringside, or not in ringside. He's got his own little, area. Watching the show, but it's not just him. It's 6 other people with him, which Bischoff, I don't know, this seemed a little bit racist, but he kind of had a problem with them being there for some reason, as if they didn't pay to be there.
Well, yeah. I guess the whole Japanese contingent is going to come in as heels in this.
I guess, and so and Bischoff being the clearly the Vince McMahon side of it, where he's a face commentator. But I'll say this. This was now probably the third or fourth time in 5 matches of Eddie that he does that top rope vertical crossbody to the outside. And I know you said that you just think it looks awesome. He does it.
I enjoy it every time he does it. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I wonder why he didn't do it with Pittman. And probably because Pittman would have fucked that up so bad. But I think that's the only one where he didn't do that move against, which was against that match with Pittman last week. Bishop then goes and talks about that Mick Foley's grandpa, homeless dude that Hogan and Savage were talking to, and was feeling a bit uncomfortable, saying, who the hell was that? He's like, I'm gonna have to talk to Hogan and see what that was all about, which makes me feel like they actually will, because if that came out of Bischoff's mouth, that probably means that yeah, they actually probably will make that into some sort of discussion.
Right.
Which I'm not really that excited about. Eddie hits a brainbuster on Benoit, which usually sets up for the frog splash. But by the time Eddie gets to the top rope, Benoit just completely shakes it off, no sells a brainbuster hard, and superplexes Eddie, which was pretty. One thing I'll always give Benoit credit, but now it also seems like, man, after years of like taking bumps like that, I can understand why he had such a crazy, what's it called, CTE?
CTE, yeah,
yeah, and but they both landed pretty hard on that superplex. Bischoff talks about Bruce Springsteen lyrics for some stupid reason. I kept on going backwards to listen to, and then I stopped caring. Benoit hits Eddie with that snap power bomb that we had talked about a couple weeks back when they first did it. But this time he releases it, gets a 2 count. Eddie is thrown to the ropes, gets Benoit in the same pinning combination that gave him the win against Pittman. But Benoit kicks out of it and then immediately kicks him in the back of the head. And I almost felt like that was Benoit saying like, no, you do not compare me to fucking Sergeant Pittman. I'm not losing to that pinning combination. Then it looks like Benoit's going to go for his finisher after a couple of, 2 counts when he bridged, I think he bridged a German suplex and a Northern Lights. And then, which I think right now his finisher is the Dragon Suplex, which is like a full Nelson German.
Right.
Eddie makes it to the ropes, Eddie makes it to the ropes before he can get to it. Bischoff then is selling the Flair and Sting match again. And the one thing I was kind of surprised about this match was I don't think they went to commercial at all on this match.
Now that I don't think they did, yeah.
Because I think usually you and I both write down hey, they went to a break and then they come back. But yeah, we get it, Bischoff. You want Flair and Sting, and I'm pretty sure you don't have to worry about selling it too much. Ultimately, what happens though is Benoit tries going for a suplex over the apron, or from the apron to the back to the ring. Eddie lands on top of him and pins him for the 1-2-3. But Benoit actually had his feet under the ropes and touching the ropes. The ref didn't see it, and Eddie still gets the win. For me, this is a 3-star match. I like that Eddie got the questionable win. I like that we didn't have a for sure winner, because I think it kind of continues the question about who's better between the two. Even though I think now Eddie is 2-0 against Benoit at this point. I think if it was a clean win, I think it would have made one of them look worse than the other. So I kind of like that there's a little bit of ambiguity as far as that. So I actually gave it a pretty nice rating of a 3-star match.
Yeah, I gave it 2 3/4. I mean, it was a pretty good match for the two of them. That they can do better, but overall, it's some of the best wrestling we're seeing right now on either show. And I too enjoy the kind of the screw job finish. Kind of sets up for a future rematch for these guys, so they keep on going as they build this cruiserweight division. After this match, we get the Tony Schiavone's back in the blue locker room. This time they're giving Sting a chance to rebuttal on Flair, cutting a promo about how Flair uses kids. And the Nasty Boys are still trying to get some action from the Blue Bloods, but guys, it's just not going to happen. Tonight's not your night. After that, we get a Slim Jim commercial, followed up by they're selling Fall Brawl on video cassette, and the cover has Vader all over it, which, of course, you remember Vader sort of quit / was fired soon after and did not wrestle at Fall Brawl. That's when Luger took his place. It was right around when right basically when we first started doing the show. Had to laugh though that classic WCW having, must have had these promo videos all put boxed, and ready to go long before the event actually happened, and there they go. Then we cut back to the commentary crew. Pepe, of course, is sitting on Mongo's shoulders because I don't even know what to do anymore when it comes to Mongo. Heenan's sipping some sake, and Bischoff drops the big news, Kyle. The fans voted. We heard you. Our main event's written now. It is Sting versus Flair. So,
shocker.
Shock to everybody. Sting comes out. He's ready to go. And Flair comes out, and you can see Sting's ready to attack Flair. So what does Flair do? Flair grabs some really large-breasted woman. I don't know where she came from, and he's holding her as a shield. It was very distracting.
You know Flair went and tried looking for her after the fucking show was over.
Oh, I'm sure she rode Space Mountain that night. The match itself, Sting, of course, starts out strong against Flair. He's got the fans big time in his corner for this one. Flair does regain for a second, but Sting's no-selling, and Sting, it's going to be kind of the theme. You know, Sting does that no-selling. It's part of his shtick, if you will, but he no-sells a lot during this match. He will Stinger splash the guardrail on the outside, though, when Flair moves, so that kind of gives Flair a chance to come back. Then we go to commercial break, and we come back from commercial break to get a World War III promo. Why do they keep doing this? Both shows do this. They come back from commercial break and give us a promo. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's a match that you want to see going on. Save the promos for in-between matches, not during matches. But thankfully, though, Kyle, it was probably a good thing we had that promo because there was apparently a low blow kick, and Bischoff did not want to have to apologize for what Flair had done to Sting. Eventually, Flair does use the figure four, wearing Sting down, and eventually, though, Sting will no-sell and reverse this figure four, which is something Mongo has never seen. I'm starting to believe, Kyle, that Mongo has never seen anything, ever, because he just seems to never see anything when he's commentating on matches.
If he has nothing else to talk about, that's his go-to.
Right. After this, it's kind of classic signature moves from both Sting and Flair, and still Sting is no-selling a lot. Eventually, Flair goes to get a chair. Randy Anderson says, no, you're not doing that. You know, takes a chair from him.
Because Randy Anderson has the ability to overpower a professional wrestler.
That's right. Hey, you know what? He's the ring general, and he's making sure they know it. Bischoff then makes an announcement that he has a special announcement after the match, which Heenan quips that he hopes it's Hogan's retiring, which just always makes me laugh. And at one point, Flair had his feet on the ropes trying to pin Sting. He got a 2 count, Sting would move. Flair pinned him 5 times in a row and just kept trying to get it. It was like if you're playing a video game with someone, you just kept hitting pin over and over and over and hoping just to get lucky on one of them.
And I also like that after he stopped doing it, the crowd was yelling at him and trying to tell the ref that he was cheating. And then Flair told the crowd to shut up.
Oh, classic heel.
I was like, classic heel move.
At some point, Sting's kind of snapping, and Randy Anderson sort of pulls Sting off. So Sting takes Randy Anderson and puts him in the corner. And meanwhile, while that's going on, Flair gets out some knuckles, punches Sting with the knuckles. And Sting kicks out of this, and at that point goes into super no-sell mode, leads to a superplex, and then the Scorpion Deathlock, getting Flair to cleanly tap in the ring. This is a 2 3/4 star match for me, Kyle. What'd you think about it?
I gave it 3 stars. The only issue I had with the match ultimately was that Sting went into no-sell mode way too many times. I think that is good for the beginning of the match to kind of get people into it. And
maybe right at the end, possibly.
Yeah, and if he's going to win, do it at the end. I did laugh at the points where he didn't sell. It was almost like he's impervious to all damage, and then a thumb to the eye, and he's out for the count for a good 5 minutes into the match. But no, like I said, I think he should be able to use that maybe once to start and once at the end. I think he did it at least 4 times in the match, and just made it each time being less impactful. It was almost like, all right, we get it, man. You're impervious to chops. But other than that, I thought it was a classic match. So I don't think anyone did anything wrong. I think they're capable of a better match than a 3-star match. But I think they did about as good as they came as advertised. So I gave it a 3-star.
After the match, Sting is refusing to let go of the Scorpion Deathlock on Flair. Of course, he did promise that he was going to murder him or leave him for dead or something. So, I mean, it makes sense that he wouldn't let this go. But Bischoff announces Lex Luger's coming out here to save the day. Here comes Lex. Lex Luger was not coming out. They even had an angle where they were showing the entranceway. Lex was nowhere to be seen, even though he kept saying Lex was coming out. Eventually, JL, Eddie Guerrero, Dave Sullivan, and Jim Duggan come out. I had to laugh. They must have just started sending people out there because Luger was missing his cue. Sting does break the hold. Eventually, he puts it back on Flair shortly thereafter, and then Luger shows up. He stares at Sting while Sting's got it on there, eventually whispers something in Sting's ear. Sting breaks the hold, and the two of them kind of leave together. After they clear out the chaos, Mean Gene is in the ring with Jimmy Hart, the Taskmaster, and the Giant. And Jimmy Hart's noting that he has Hogan's power of attorney, and he signed off on at their match at Halloween Havoc and said that the title could change hands in the event of a disqualification. So that being the case, Giant wins the title because he won by disqualification. And some jabroni lawyer of Dick Bockwinkel's came out and says,
"Hey, be a little more. That's clear. That's Dean Ambrose's uncle, Nick Lambrose."
He comes out and says, because of the dubious nature of this disqualification, instead the title is going to be vacated, and it will now, the winner of World War III will not get the world title match. They will instead become world champions. So that adds a new stipulation, Kyle, to World War III, which of course is now discussed as the commentary team kind of closes out the show. And then, Kyle, we finish up by letting us know what's happening next week on Nitro. We've got Macho Man making his return versus Ming. They also mentioned that the return of Eddie Guerrero, who literally wrestled tonight, so I'm not sure why it's a return, will be wrestling Johnny B. Bad for that television title, even though they were just talking about how Eddie Guerrero is going to be in the Cruiserweight title division. So I'm not sure why they're putting that match together. And then they're going to wrap things up with Sting versus Dean Malenko. So overall, 3 matches that make no sense at all, but they should actually be pretty good matches. So what was your thoughts on Nitro?
This one was definitely filled with more drama than it was with decent wrestling, although I will say Sting and Flair are always going to – they know how to wrestle each other. They wrestle each other dozens and dozens of times. So, I mean, they know what to do in the ring together. But overall, I actually thought it was an okay show. And once again, we're also comparing the last 2 Nitros, which I think we kind of thought were pretty bad. But we got to see, the Giant squash someone in seconds. You saw what may be the character death of Renegade. And then the further pushing of Eddie Guerrero, and I think that's why they are giving him a TV title shot. I don't think he wins. I don't know. Actually, I can't speak on that. I don't know for sure.
My guess is that Benoit's going to come out and get mad about their shit finish this week and cause some shenanigans there. But that's just my theory.
Yeah, maybe. And but I think because they've been pushing Eddie Guerrero so much, it just makes sense. Because nobody believes in giving the old champions rematch clauses, I guess. So you're not going to see DDP take on Johnny B. Bad unless they did that on WCW Pro and we didn't know any better. But Sting versus Malenko, that's as random as all hell. I have no idea why they're doing that. I'm not saying I'm not going to enjoy the match from a pure wrestling perspective, but come on, guys, give us a reason to be invested in this match other than, I guess just good wrestling technical prowess. But at the same time, too, Sting has only really wrestled Flair in as far as matches where I feel like the other wrestler was decent. So I'm actually kind of interested in seeing how Sting does against somebody that's not Flair, that's actually good.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. As for me, the show in general, I mean, the matches, like you said, weren't all that great. They were okay. They booked the Giant still to be a monster. And the only thing I'll say is that they promised the 4 Horsemen this week, and you really didn't see it. I kind of thought that's how the show was going to end when Sting wasn't breaking it, but I guess we'll wait and see if that happens. Better than the last couple weeks, and honestly, just the absurdity of the show in general made me kind of enjoy it. Now, that said, we'll flip the script and go to Raw, where the fans aren't getting a say. And we open up with the recap from last week. Of course, Ahmed Johnson had that big body slam on Yokozuna. And then they cut and show you that the King is going to use a chair in tonight's main event. So they're already spoiling the main event for us. They don't even need Bischoff to do it. And then we got our opening match, Kyle. Of course, the British Bulldog versus Marty Jannetty. This match was announced last week. And Doc Hendricks is going to be announcing tonight as Lawler's going to be wrestling. So you got Hendricks and Vince on commentary crew. And before the match starts, they recap Marty Jannetty, of course, attacked Bulldog and kind of almost punched Clarence Mason and all that last week. And then we got our match, Kyle. And what'd you think about this Bulldog Jannetty match to open up Raw?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that as much as I kind of like Doc Hendricks, I miss Jerry. I know he's irreplaceable in the mid '90s as a commentary at this point, especially because you've got the heel perspective. Now you just have 2 baby faces, giving. Which kind of like it's tough to do because both of them kind of want to probably talk about the same things. So it just becomes like who talks about what positive thing about
right. Yeah, there's face. Not the dynamic's not as good there without a heel one. No, sure,
exactly. So one thing I loved about this match was that this was like basically the matchup between who had the most tassels and frills and shit all over their outfits. It was just nothing but fringe and tassels as they lock up, just everything just flowing in the wind. And Bulldog, for the most part, is going to show off his physique. I mean, he flexes all the time anyway, so he better do some power moves. Marty gets some offense in, hits him with an enziguri, or AKA look at that maneuver by Vince for a 2 count. Then Vince mentioned something about how Bulldog is finally going to get what he wanted, and they said that they'll leave that to Clarence Mason, who'll explain that later. But first, Bulldog gorilla presses Marty and drops him face first onto the top rope in order to kind of establish the momentum. We then get the split screen of Clarence Mason. He pops up and says that the Bulldog will have his title match that he's been crying about getting another one at the In Your House that follows Survivor Series. So whoever wins between Bret Hart and Diesel will then take on the British Bulldog. That'll definitely drive up pay-per-view sales right there, because nothing says money like the British Bulldog in a main event. Bulldog with the...
Hey, I will say, though, Clarence Mason's still batting 1,000. The dude gets things done.
He does. I mean, that guy is all about results, and so far he's been nailing it. I also like that Nitro also had their version of Clarence Mason on their show this week. So Bulldog hits like a kind of like a power suplex where he kind of holds it up in the air. Once again, classic Bulldog. Does a little bit of heel move with pulling Marty by the hair. And then we start getting into this endless just chain of chin locks. Like, and I said, I'm going to shorten this. I had a lot that I wrote down, but really in the end, Marty does a little bit of like kind of like a fired up comeback until Bulldog stops it in its tracks and then gets right back to the chin lock. This goes on for probably about 4 or 5 different times.
Yeah,
I almost thought this was a Randy Orton match with how many headlocks and chin locks I was seeing. We saw another Tree of Woe, just like we saw in Nitro. I swear to God, I think Nitro's watching the shows and then thinking like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing. Let's put that in this match, which obviously they can do because they've already seen all the results before. So after probably about the 8th chin lock or so, Marty hits Bulldog with an elbow as he's stuck in the corner. Does kind of like a somersault Bulldog. It looked cool, but I have no idea what the result of that match was supposed to do as far as damage. It just looked weird. But it looked kind of cool. Like I said, I liked the way it looked. I felt like maybe Bulldog didn't sell it correctly, but whatever. Vince loved it. He called it a fantastic maneuver. So Jannetty gets on his, face, his baby face. He's getting on fire, throwing elbows, tossing Bulldog around. The crowd's really getting into it, or at least the pre-canned crowd noise. They probably pumped into the taping, because if you look out in the crowd, they look like they're just all comatose.
They're not saying Marty.
The thing is, I hear that, but I don't see faces or mouths moving.
Right.
So Marty goes for the flying fist, which I think at this point is his finisher. Bulldog moves out of the way, but Marty actually sees it coming, hits him with a DDT for a 2 count, and then Marty goes for some stupid charge like an idiot, hits his shoulder into the ring post. Bulldog hits the power slam for the win. 2.5 stars. I think it actually could have been a better rated match. I actually did like the match. I just hated the pace of it, which I guess that's kind of Bulldog's thing, is kind of keeping the person grounded. It was just he went back to that move way too much, and I definitely could have given this more if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, I gave it 2.5 stars. Bulldog won with power, but it was kind of slowed down match. The only thing I want to add, Marty Jannetty, I think, has looked better than I expected during this singles run since he was returned to Raw. But ultimately, you knew Bulldog had to win, especially with the world title match coming in December's In Your House. So solid, but nothing great. After that, Kyle, I missed this. You mentioned in your notes. I must have looked down or something like that. There was some Bill Clinton will be watching Survivor Series cut or something to that effect.
They had a pre-recorded video of an impersonator. I mean, it wasn't actually Bill Clinton, although I will say the guy did a good job of impersonating him. But it was right in front of the Washington Monument. and basically just saying he compared the WWF to the United Nations, about how the United Nations is there to bring together and to make the nations happy, or to bring together the nations, whereas WWF is there to bring together the people. And because of that, any kind of institution that helps the American people become better together, he is going to be in attendance, or at the very least, he will be definitely watching Survivor Series, and he's not going to miss it, and neither should you.
Very, very good job from the president. After that, Jim Cornette's going to cut a promo. He discusses Bulldog Survivor Series match, and then also mentions how he's going to get his justice finally at In Your House 5. He'll get that world title match that he should get. Bulldog, typical Bulldog fashion, cuts a quick promo because you don't want to let him talking for too long. Basically says he barely broke a sweat against, Marty Jannetty. Which is actually kind of true. He didn't look all that sweaty. Sometimes they cut these promos and say that, and they're like,
I'm glad that you noticed that, but then completely missed a 60-second promo about Bill Clinton.
Here's the deal. Jimmy Garoppolo was traded to the 49ers while I was watching this, and I was on Twitter and also watching it, so I missed some of what was going on here. So I apologize for that. It was big news at the time of me watching it. After the Cornette promo, we get a recap from WWF Superstars, which I think was their Saturday morning show or Sunday morning, one of those two, where Goldust and Bam Bam Bigelow were talking, and Bam Bam challenged Goldust to a match at Survivor Series, which Goldust has accepted. So now we have another match to add to the Survivor Series card, which is filling up quickly, Kyle. After that, we get Henry Godwinn versus Terry Richards, or better known as Rhyno. It's always interesting, Kyle, to see some of these guys long before they're anybody's. In early squash matches on.
I think this is the first guy that I remember we've seen now getting squashed, because Rhyno, obviously, now that we look at his whole entire, his resume. I mean, he's a former NWA champion, TNA champion. He actually has a decent resume and a guy that would not have a squash match against really anybody.
Right.
And it was just crazy to see him, how young he looked and how just generic he was.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
I love it. It's always nice to because I'm like, who the hell is Terry? It's always goes who the hell is Terry Richards? Let's go to Wikipedia. I type in Terry Richards, and the first thing I see is Rhyno. I'm like, get the fuck out.
Yep. They recap before the match from 2 weeks ago in Superstars, when Hunter Hearst Helmsley was almost slopped by Henry Godwinn, and the announcement is made that next week Godwinn will be wrestling Triple H on Raw. Kyle, really not much to break down. This is a very quick standard squash match. It ends with the slop drop, which is sort of that scorpion death drop, reverse DDT kind of move. I'm going to give it a 1.5 stars. Anything you want to add to this?
No, I mean, I gave it 1 3/4. No one messed up on their spots. I probably would have given it 2 if I thought the crowd at least was halfway interested. Just because, as long as they're there for a reason. They're there to give Godwinn some TV time, because there is a little bit of a storyline going on. But I think because the crowd is not in it, and once again, this is also the final day in Brandon, Manitoba. But the way they do it is they tape 3 episodes of Raw in one's place. This is the third show in a sense. So I think the crowd is kind of looking forward to going home to their maple syrup and bacon.
There you have it. After the match, Hunter comes out and drops a pedigree on Henry Godwinn, and then he puts on some gloves, which was always nice, before he slops Godwinn with his own slop. After this, you get a WrestleMania arcade game promo, and then followed up, you get Karate Fighters Present Survivor Series Slam Jam. Of course, with Doc Hendricks out on commentary booth, he's not running it this week. Instead, we get Todd Pettengill, and he comes in air guitaring, which is just classic Todd. And he's got a big announcement. We got another Survivor Series match, Kyle. We've got the Royals, which is King Mabel, Isaac Yankem, Triple H, and Jerry Lawler versus the Dark Side, The Undertaker, Savio Vega, Henry Godwinn, and Fatu. Gotta be honest, it's sort of a random pairings, but again, it's typical Survivor Series. You've got Mabel and Undertaker feuding, so they put them together. You've got Godwinn and Triple H feuding, so you put them together. And then Yankem and Jerry Lawler just kind of get tossed in there. And, as Savio Vega and Fatu do as well. After this, we cut to a quick promo of Paul Bearer with The Undertaker. Paul Bearer basically cuts a promo about Undertaker's gruesome, hideous face and keeps going on about how repulsed everybody's going to be. He looks repulsed by his face, and Taker just, his back's to the camera. So you're getting that tease. You're not going to be able to see his face till Survivor Series. And Taker basically says that no Royal will survive. After that, we get a Diesel promo where Kevin Nash is basically like leaning at a 45-degree angle the entire time. It really bothered me. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but he just had this...
I think they do that a lot when you've got like a guy who has got like beefy arms, so they like to do like the side move just to show how huge his arms are. Yeah.
It was a pretty lame promo, but Todd Pettengill thinks it's going to be the greatest world title match in the history of our sport.
I think his sweater vest is too tight.
This has terrible match written all over it, but we'll wait and see. And then afterwards, Kyle, we get Kama versus Ted DiBiase, or Kama with Ted DiBiase. I kind of wish it was Kama versus Ted DiBiase. Would have been a better match. Kama, of course, is part of Money Inc. He's going to be wrestling Tony Roy. Before the match starts, they let us know that Hart and Diesel are going to have a face-to-face interview next week to discuss their upcoming match. And then the merchandise guy, Barry Dudinsky, is going to sell you 1,000 Madcaps, or as we like to know him here in the States as Pogs. And he dumps them all over the ring and says for $21 you can get 1,000 Pogs and 2 of these Slammers. So great deal, Kyle. And it makes me think of just the fun times playing with Pogs back in '95.
I just kept thinking about how much money that I just wasted on like pieces of plastic.
Oh yeah.
And but I actually, as soon as I saw him do that, like kind of like put all this stuff on the ring, I just thought that like, oh my god, this Raw would have been the best Raw ever if Kama or Ted DiBiase saw that and just fucking kicked them all
over the place.
The apron, just kicked them all over the place and just shat all over the mayor of merchandising. Yeah, seriously.
Then we get another super slow motion shot of Ahmed Johnson body slamming Yokozuna. That's all just to say that Ahmed Johnson's going to be debuting next week on Raw. And then we got Shawn Michaels on the phone, Kyle, discussing his return to the ring after the whole Syracuse incident. And he says that he feels okay after his first match. They ask him who's going to win, Diesel versus Hart, and he says he respects both guys and he doesn't want to pick. They talk to him about Ahmed Johnson being on his team. He says he doesn't know Ahmed, but he's thrilled to have him. I'm going to say he's not going to be thrilled to have him once he knows what a piece of shit worker he is. They talk about how he can't trust Psycho Sid. And then he says, depending on how things go, he may end up getting beat up by 9 guys again during that match. After that, you find out Kama has won by a punch to the face. By the way, all this happened while Kama was having his match. This is a squash matches go, Kyle. This is a 1.5 stars. You were focused on Michaels on the phone, and that was about it. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to this match.
I think 1.5 stars sounds about right. I may have given it like another 1/4 star if Kama's finishing move wasn't a punch to the fucking face.
Hey, Big Show got over with that same concept.
But at least like he like it looks like he's cocked and loaded to do it.
Yeah.
Like, or he makes it look like that's a big. Plus, he is a gigantic hand.
Hey, Goldust won with a kick to the midsection last week. So, what do you expect?
I thought he had like a cool inverted pin or something.
Well, he did have that armbar pin afterwards, but his finishing move, if you will, before the pin was a kick to the midsection.
I like to just say that the pin was the finishing move, but I see where you're coming from with that.
Fair enough. After that, we get a promo that 1-2-3 Kid is going to be the special guest referee for the Intercontinental title match next week between Razor Ramon and Psycho Sid.
Old Cycle Sid.
Cycle Sid. This match, Kyle, the title could change on a count-out or disqualification, so tune in next week to see if 1-2-3 Kid screws things up for Razor or not.
And I feel like if they're just going to just pepper in that stipulation, I feel like either a count-out or disqualification is in the books.
We'll find out. It's going to be interesting. You got to stay tuned for that. But first, Kyle, we're going to get a Smoking Guns Karate Fighters promo. Billy Gunn wins, but Bart Gunn's going to take him in the rematch, so good to see a split there on the Karate Fighters match. And we go to our main event, Isaac Yankem and Jerry Lawler versus Bret Hart and Hakushi, who have Barry Horowitz in their corner. And I got to be honest, Kyle, before the match started, Yankem and Lawler come out, and then Hart and Hakushi come out, and there's like fireworks and pyros going off as they get into the ring. I think it's a little biased to have such a highly produced entrance for the baby faces, but not for the heels.
I feel like Jerry Lawler speaks for itself. I think that he's all the bravado that you need.
Okay, I'll give you that. The fans, though, disagreed with you. They were chanting Burger King, and they cut to 4 fans with gold dust face paint wearing Burger King crowns. Of course, you remember these 4 guys as the guys that were at last week's show, further proving that they filmed in the same arena with the same crowd. As for the match itself, Kyle, it was okay. It was all right. Early on, Hakushi and Hart are kind of going back and forth, working on Yankum. And then Hakushi does that cartwheel elbow that we saw on Nitro this week. And then he does it again later in the match, which Yankum reverses, which I kind of liked from a strategy, psychology standpoint. Like, hey, you fool me once, cool. The second time, you're telegraphing it's coming. The minute I see that cartwheel, I'm going to slam you down. So I did like that. Lawler eventually gets tagged in, Kyle, after kind of a while, and he drops the pile driver on Hakushi. Still love Lawler's. He's got one of the best pile drivers of all time.
I think he's like one of 8 people alive that's grandfathered allowed to do the pile driver.
Right. He doesn't pin him, though, and then he does follow it up with another pile driver and then taunts Hart. So, there's still that Bret Hart-Jerry Lawler feud. And I wonder if they're really going to ever get a one-on-one match without Yankum and all that eventually down the line. I kind of hope so. Eventually, Bret Hart kind of gets that classic heel-face tag team match where Hart is tries to get into the ring. The ref, gets distracted, telling him to go away, and the heels, meanwhile, double-team Hakushi. Eventually, though, Bret Hart will get into the ring, get the hot tag, clear house, do his moves, and puts Yankum in the sharpshooter. The ref gets distracted again, though, because of interference from the Lawler and Hakushi. Yankum is tapping away, which the ref doesn't see, and the commentary doesn't really even comment. Usually they're saying, oh, he's tapping. I didn't hear anything about that. And then Jerry Lawler brings in the chair. Of course, we saw this at the beginning of the show. And when I say brings in a chair, it's not your standard steel folding chair. It's like one of those like plastic, just bingo hall chairs. And
yeah, like I always think like when we were in high school and like you had to set up for bingo in the old NPR.
Right, exactly.
It was those kinds of chairs, yeah.
Right, which I'm sure everybody, all of our listeners, know exactly what you're talking about. But the point is, it doesn't fold. And Horowitz, being the hero that he is, grabs the chair from Lawler just in time for the ref to turn around, sees Horowitz holding a chair, and that's enough to disqualify the faces. I'm not sure how that works, Kyle. I guess we got Nick Patrick over here refereeing this main event.
I hate it.
This is a 2.25 star match for me. It was okay from a heel-face tag team standpoint. I thought the ending was really dumb, and still wasn't. I think it was kind of random for me that Hakushi was even in this match to begin with, but that's a whole nother side of it. What'd you think?
I also gave it 2.25 stars. This match actually had some decent promise for a match that had Isaac Yankum in it, especially when we were talking about him being in a cage match with Bret Hart and how awful that match was. So that's why I was not looking forward to this match, but it actually had decent pace, and I was okay with it and would have given it a 2.75 star match if it wasn't for the fact of the ending. I absolutely hated the ending. Also because I'm pretty sure this match leads the ending of this match and everything kind of leads to nothing in the future. So why end the match in that fashion if you're not going to just build off of that? But I think very disappointing ending to an otherwise better than I expected match.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, we come to a tour de force promo, and then we kind of close the show out with the commentary booth mentioning next week's matches again. And after they discuss each matches, they say, let's show a promo mentioning all these matches. So they just kind of repeated themselves. Of course, you got the Intercontinental title match, Razor Ramon versus Psycho Sid. I called him Psycho Sid again. I don't know why I keep doing it. Psycho Sid. And of course, 1, 2, 3 Kid, the special guest referee. Count out and disqualification can cause the title to change. You get the Ahmed Johnson debut, and then you get Triple H versus Henry Godwinn. And Kyle, right as it was ending, I don't know if you caught this quote or not, they said, will Hunter Hearst Helmsley finally taste the Hogman's slop? And I go, they did not just say, like, did they really just put that in there? So I'm looking forward to seeing if Triple H will taste the Hogman's slop. I don't know about you.
I think you're the only one that's looking forward to that.
Overall thoughts on the show, Kyle? For me, it wasn't that great of a show. Most of the matches were squash matches. The main event, I felt, like I said, Hakushi was a weird fill-in there that could have probably put somebody who was in that Lawler Yankum, one of his opponents, in that Survivor Series match, on the side with Hart, because you just were kind of putting another face there. Kind of weird. Overall, though, at least they're pushing Bulldog correctly, but outside of that, not much to write home for from me. What about you?
It was okay. Once again, I'm always comparing it to the Raw before, and Raw before was terrible. This one wasn't crazy awesome. You had two okay quality matches, and then two kind of squash matches, which is kind of what Nitro gave you as well. One thing that wasn't a really big fan of was that there wasn't really a whole lot of storytelling from this show. I don't think they really are moving forward with anything. I don't really know what kind of story there is outside of like Bret Hart, Jerry Lawler, which really is a personal feud, that nothing that really has like a belt on the line. And I know that can't be something they can continue doing because Bret Hart is in the world title picture. They can't just keep on dragging Jerry Lawler through that. At some point, they've got to part ways for the time being. I did like some of the 90s references they did on the show. So from entertaining perspective, there were some entertaining parts, but as far as the wrestling itself and the storytelling, which I think you and I are more purist about, I think that definitely fell flat.
So is it safe to say you thought Nitro had the better show this week?
Yes, I think I would definitely give it to Nitro this week. Even though as much as I laughed with the Luger botch, I mean, then that's completely egregious and unacceptable. I don't know how Bischoff can't just look at the fucking entranceway and not see a Luger,
and not see he's not there. At least that show's live.
Do you remember? I remember first week about Alex Wright did the same exact thing.
Yep.
So, but the storytelling was better, and I think the match quality was better. So from that perspective, and also the storylines are continuing on Nitro. So I think there is something to look forward to, or at least we got more answers than we did questions, and then we also got new questions. So, and I think that's the whole point. The one thing that Nitro's always done a very good job of is getting you kind of excited for like, ooh, what's going to happen next week? This whole like Luger Sting thing has kind of been, who knows? This like now the whole thing with the world title being vacated. I mean, that creates questions, and also just because of how weird the card is next week, it's almost intriguing, even though it's really random. And also, the only thing I think Raw had was they have one more Todd Pettengill than Nitro does. But other than that, I definitely give Nitro the nod.
The world definitely needs more Todd Pettengill. For me, though, I agree, giving Nitro the nod. I thought, neither show was great, but Nitro is definitely better. I thought they had the better show. Like you said, they're furthering more stories. The matches overall were better. Even the squash matches, you had a little bit better talent. And I kind of just like the absurdity of it. Plus, as a fan, I got to vote on the main event, so that was always cool, right? As for the Nielsen ratings, though, Kyle, they're going to disagree with us. Nitro was down to a 2.0, which is probably the worst it's been yet, and that's actually down from a 2.3 that was pretty bad last week. Raw, though, was a 2.1 last week, and it went up to a 2.6, so Raw definitely did better. We'll have to see how that goes next week. So that's going to be the show this week, Kyle. And that's it. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. We're on Google Play. Give us a follow. Give us a review. We always appreciate the feedback on how our shows are. So, and if you don't want to leave it on iTunes or Google Play, you can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, leave us feedback at any of those areas, and let us know what we can do better. And if social media is not your thing, we're also on the MondayNightTours.com website that, lists everything else. You can find all that kind of stuff on there. Let us know what, how we're doing. And ultimately, don't forget to watch the November 13th 95 versions of Nitro and Raw next week. And also, as this show's dropping tonight on ESPN at 10 p.m. Eastern, you got Ric Flair's 30 for 30 on the Nature Boy, so that's something you should definitely check out. I think it's
absolutely
should be a really good one.
I've been told by people who've already seen the premiere it's one of the best 30 for 30s.
So there you have it. That's going to be the show. For Kyle Hogan, I'm Josh Kaiser, and we will see you guys next time on the Monday Night Tours.
Have a good Tuesday. See ya.